Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Dan here today, and as it is Wednesday, I am bringing you another World of Tanks video, but this one's going to be a little bit different. Today, I'm going to do a hopefully relatively quick review on the SU-100M1. If you saw last week's video, you may have seen the one replay in which I had first shown off this tank, and it's actually a really nice tank. I think I still like the SU-100 a little bit more, uh, but for a tank destroyer, it's actually pretty good if you can play it right. Now, a lot of people will tell you that this tank is absolutely awful, and there are a few key things that I'm going to point out in a little bit that make this tank really bad. Uh, but I definitely had a lot more fun playing with this than I did with the SU-152. Uh, so first major difference between the SU-152 and the SU-100M1 would be that on the SU-152, the the gun is mounted to the front, while the SU-100M1 is mounted to the back. So what this ends up doing is this gives this gun horrible gun depression. So you can only get something like I think it was 4 degrees of gun depression, like when you go down. Um, Going up's all right. It's not too bad. Uh, but overall, it's an all right tank if you can keep far away from the enemy. So uh, if you can keep farther away, the gun depression isn't going to be as much of a problem. Uh, One of the major benefits to this tank is that it is highly mobile. Unlike the SU-152, which weighed a lot, and it may have had the same engine power as the SU-100M1, but this thing is significantly lighter. Even though it actually has more armor on the front and on the sides, but in the rear it's really bad. Uh, though surprisingly, I have gotten bounces on the rear. No idea how I've done that though. So first things first, I'm going to go through some of the statistics for it, and then I'm going to show you maybe how you want to research this tank. So I'm going to bring up the SU-152 so we can kind of compare the two. So the SU-100M1 is the other Tier 7 tank destroyer. So if I go to the tech tree and move this over here, no, over here, come on, here we go. SU-100, you can either go to the SU-152 or the SU-100M1. SU-100M1 was more expensive to research and to purchase than the SU-152. Just a side note, in fact, this entire line of the new Russian tank destroyers is more expensive, experience and coin-wise. So first notable difference is that the SU-152 has 40 more points of health. That is not a lot of a difference. So it isn't a big thing, but 830 is on the lower end of the Tier 7 tank destroyers. Weight. This tank, the SU-152, is extremely heavy. Meanwhile, the SU-100M1 is actually comparable to the SU-85 in its weight. Top speed, 43 kilometers an hour for the SU-152, and 50 for the SU-100M1. It is a lot easier to hit this max speed, or at least get close to it in the SU-100M1, and it's a lot faster too because you can accelerate pretty quickly. Traverse speed, that is a major difference. 9 degrees definitely matters when you're being circled by a medium or light tank. Armor. As you can see, this is a more the armor is more spread out around the tank, and on the SU-100M1 it's kind of more front, sides, and then rear is awful. This is where you meet the first major turnoff for these tank destroyers. Average shell damage for the SU-152 is anywhere between 525 and 875. For the SU-100M1, anywhere between 188 and 313. The SU-100M1 uses the 100 millimeter gun that is similar to the one on the SU-100. Right here, only doing about an average of 250 damage per shot. So that's where you get your first major turnoff to this specific line, because none of these newer Russian tank destroyers do a lot in the way of damage. But I'll get back to that in a second. Standard shell penetration, anywhere between 101 and 169 on the SU-152. On the SU-100M1, notable difference, 131 to 219. So you get better penetration on the SU-100M1. You could get the same amount of penetration on the SU-152 while doing 390 damage on average. But the problem is that if you were going with the SU-152, you pretty much want to use the derp cannon rather than the awful 122 millimeter guns. Another notable difference that's actually significant: 3.39 rounds per minute on the SU-152. On the SU-100M1, you have 10.17. So with the setup I have that I'll go over in a second, this is about 5 seconds to reload. This is about maybe 13-14 seconds for me. Gun traverse, not overly important, but slower on the SU-152 and faster on the SU-100M1. View range, awful, kind of awful, but better than the SU-152. Signal range, it's only got about 100 meters difference, SU-100M1 being the worst. Crew, one major difference is that the SU-152 has 2 loaders, while the SU-100M1 only has 1. Since it's a smaller tank, that's notable. It's understandable because it's a smaller tank. You're not going to be able to fit people in there as easily. So I guess what I should do now is explain maybe how you would want to go about researching this tank. So it is relatively expensive to get. First off, I mean, 48,200 experience points is quite a bit compared to what the 31,000 of the SU-152, correct? Yeah. You will get quite a few of these parts. You will get the radio, the top radio from the SU-100 and the SU-85. So if you went through those 2 tanks, you should already have it. You will also get this engine off the SU-100. Everything else is going to be stock. So you'll have this stock gun, which is actually alright. It's basically the same thing as this one, except this one's a lot better. It fires faster, it's got better accuracy, and its aiming time is also faster. So the order you might want to go in acquiring these is, since this is meant to be a very mobile tank, you probably would want to do the engine and the tracks, either or. I'd probably go with the tracks first and then the engine, and then the gun last, just because these 2 guns are close to the same, and this one, you don't even really need to get this one. In fact, you don't even need to get any of this in order to get to the next tank. But I would recommend maxing this thing out because it gets experience very fast. In fact, I've only been collecting experience on this tank for probably about maybe a week, so it's a really fast accumulation process. Now to get to the parts that I've chosen. So I haven't loaded up any other types of ammunition. I just keep forgetting to do it, but you probably want some HE and some APCR. For the major, like, I don't know, what these things were called. Uh, but I went with a camouflage net, medium caliber gun rammer, and improved ventilation. So uh, you don't really need the camouflage net because the camouflage rating on this tank is actually pretty good compared to the SU-152. This is just nice for whenever you're kind of sitting far back and you want to stay concealed. You could go for binocular telescope or coated optics. It really doesn't matter. I mean, anything for this other one is a good choice. But I would recommend these two so that way it increases your reload speed, and this would increase just about everything on your tank, making it significantly better. So now we're going to get down to the actual armor on the tank. So as it says here, it's 90, 75, 45. From the front, this tank can get quite a few bounces if you can play your armor just right. This plate right here is something like 120 millimeters thick if you can keep it angled directly forward. So it's actually hard for some tier 6 tanks to actually penetrate this, and some tier 5. Tank destroyers you're going to want to watch out for because they probably will be able to shoot through this. The armor here along the sides of the gun itself are a little over 100 because of the slanting. You don't want to shoot for these parts because these are actually really heavily armored because of the extra thickness on the sides. So it is just a really small target to try to shoot at, so your best bet is if it's coming head on, you're going to want to either shoot for the sides here, but you need the accuracy for it, or under here, because on the sides it's either not going to penetrate or it's going to bounce right off. So bouncing is pretty good in this tank. You don't want to rely on it necessarily, but if you're facing off against a tier 5 light tank, you can almost guarantee it. For example, I was in a match against at least 3 tier 8 tanks, all of which were firing head on at me. Most of their shots actually just bounced off of me because of how I set up my armor. I had it slightly angled like this, and I was hiding slightly behind a rock as well, so it was really hard for them to shoot at me, and they actually resorted to HE at one point. And meanwhile, I'm just sitting there shooting at them with this 100mm gun. The damage isn't great, but as you're going to see in one of my replays, it adds up quickly. So yeah, armor is pretty good on this tank. I mean, compared to some of the other tank destroyers, sorry. It may not be the best, but for its maneuverability and rate of fire, this is actually a pretty nice tank for its just the way it is. I did get a mark of excellence on it as a few nights ago, so that was an interesting match. I don't remember if I have it saved though. So compared to the SU-152, size-wise, this is the size you're looking at. Yeah, it's kind of like the SU-100. If you like the SU-100 and its mobility, and you didn't preferably like the 122mm gun, and you preferred the 100mm, then you're probably going to love the SU-100M1, because it's just like the SU-100 with the 100mm gun, except like better. Of course, I preferred the 122mm cannon because it's just a good gun for that tier. So that's about it. You can choose whatever you want for the perks once you get to 100, but camouflage and Sixth Sense is probably the best way you want to go. So I guess I have to go show replays now. So I'll get one loaded up and I'll be back then. Alright, so here I am in a tier 8 match. Now, this was back before I had my Mark of Excellence, so, you know, this was also, I believe, back before I had the better of the two guns. It might have been, I don't remember. So, I usually don't do good in these games just because, I don't know, I just have a problem whenever I'm in a match with a bunch of tier 8s because I usually die really quickly. So, I don't usually do this version, like this game mode on this map very often. So, especially on this side, I don't think I've ever been on this side before for this mode. Of course, you know, being in a tier 7 tank, that's kind of surprising. So I kind of don't know where to go. And I'm debating where I probably should position myself, and I think, okay, maybe tanks might come over that ridge, so I could probably do something from there. So I'm sitting here, not really a whole lot happens, so I'm going to speed up a little bit more. And so they start finding us tanks to shoot at. Of course, I can't do any of that because of reasons. So I'm trying to get a shot off on these two heavies over here. There's the penetration fighting with me. But as you can see, the accuracy of this gun is actually pretty good because I was able to plant one right in the top of his turret. One more shot from me and that should kill him. In fact, both of his tanks, this should be a one-shot kill for me. I'm keeping an eye on the tanks that are up on the ridge because I really don't like getting shot at from the side. One notable problem with this tank is that since the engine is mounted to the front instead of in the rear, any shot that usually penetrates to the front will at least 75% of the time damage your engine, so you have to be careful. So here we are, and I take a hit. I fire once more at the tank destroyer. I have no idea how I made that shot. As you can see, I absorbed one right in the side of the front, so it went through quite a bit of armor. KV-85, oh not KV-85, KV-5. And this is the part where I notice all their tanks are coming from over here. And I'm not penetrating him, but the thing is none of them are moving because apparently being shot at from the side is not a dangerous thing. I'm doing my best to just slowly tear them down. We're slightly winning, but the problem is that all of our tanks have pretty much left the one spot, so it's not looking good over here. And he's... I hate when that happens. I should have aimed for the back. But there he goes. So there's my second kill. And I don't believe I get any more, but the thing is that what I just did there, I just put so much damage into those tanks. Now, T-28 prototype. I had a game the other day where I bounced 2 shots from one of these tanks. But not in that occasion. I ended up taking it. He misses that time. Plant one right in the side of his turret. And someone finishes him off. But the likelihood that I was going to get that shot was very slim. That would have had to have gone through a lot of armor. So I'm sitting here on just 2 kills, but the amount of damage I have managed to do is insane. So I'm really not comfortable with going over this ridge because I have too little health. Plant one right in the back of the KV-85. Another one. Someone finishes him off. And someone finishes off the KV-5. Now, that match, although I only had 2 kills, all of the shots I fired accumulated into over 3,000 damage in this tank. I obviously had eye caliber from that, but, like, the low damage that this tank does is made up for with its DPM. Because if you can keep putting shots into tanks, then they're going to feel it after a while. So that's the end of replay 1. I'm going to move on to the next one, and I'll see you guys then. Alright, so in this battle I am a top tier tank. And this is usually really nice for this tank, considering it can bounce quite a few shots from enemy tanks in this match. Now, if you remember the AT-8 from my first major World of Tanks video celebrating my 100th subscriber special thing, one funny thing to note is that their penetration is usually not good enough to actually get through this tank. So it's pretty funny that now I have the superiority, and if I can shoot through the commander's hatch, they're pretty much done for. Now, this doesn't completely bounce all their shots. If they can get, you know, a nice accurate shot into the sides next to the gun, it will likely go through. So here I am, SU-100M1. Now, I'm going to point this out immediately. I do end up dying in this match. It is something that will happen quite often if your team cannot support you. Because this is like really hard to explain, but this is kind of like an aggressive tank destroyer. But the problem is that you can only really play aggressively if you have a team to back you up. And the problem is that in this match, they don't do a very good job of that. So I'm up here by myself, and you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to speed this up. Someone is already on the cap. That's one mistake they're going to make, but the problem is that now a bunch of our team is going to try to go take them off. As you can see, there's very few tanks actually coming up here. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, not very likely I'm going to be able to put any shots through their turrets. I'd have to get a really nice shot, and T-29s, they're not too good to shoot at from the front. So here I am trying to take advantage of this guy. Now, this is where the tank is really good, because when tanks try to poke around the corner like that, it's pretty funny. So I bounced a shot there. Put another shot in. Using the T-29 to my advantage, because he's likely going to bounce all the shots that come to the side of him. So he's still sitting there bouncing all the shots for me. I get my first kill. Tiger. I'm not really going to be able to rely on the T-29 anymore. So I shoot for the commander's hatch to go for a nice weak spot. First point of damage, but meanwhile I'm pouring so much into him. Track gets not knocked out. Kill the Tiger P. Bouncing all of these shots, as you can see. So this isn't looking too good for me, and my observation port has been damaged and needs repairing. Still bouncing all these shots, but it comes to an end right there. Now, at the end of the game, even though I only had 2 kills, I had bounced or absorbed over 3,000, no, not 3,000, that was damage I dealt. I absorbed or bounced over 1,900 points of damage worth of shells, and I did over 3,000 damage. So that was a good example of how if you can angle the armor correctly and try to pick off your enemies one by one, that you'll be able to do a lot of damage in this. And as you can see, I had almost no support from my team on this side, so it was basically me by myself. We ended up winning this game only because I was able to tear down the health of all of these tanks far enough, otherwise we probably would have lost. So that would be the second replay for this tank. You can get quite a few kills in this tank, it's just it's really hard to do since the damage on it is so low, and a lot of other tanks will do more damage than you at this point now. Otherwise, it's a really nice tank. So it does see a lot of tier 8 matches. Tier 9 and tier 7 matches are usually a little bit rarer. Either way, it can do pretty good if you're shooting at the side or the lower Iglesias on the tank. And I mean, it's a really good tank destroyer. It's reliable for the most part, and I fully recommend it. so I'll probably be doing more replays on it at some point in the future, just because I like it so much. And otherwise, I will see you guys next time. If you liked this video, then show me that you care and like the video itself. And if you want to see more stuff like this, subscribe or comment and tell me that you want to see more replays and uh, like reviews for some of the Russian tank destroyers, because those are kind of the only ones I've worked with. Anyway, enough stalling. I will see you guys next time.